Okay. All right. We're live. My apologies, everyone. Sometimes it's a little crazy trying to put all the phones together and make it all happen, but we did it. I'm Dr. Daryl Wolf. This is DocStar TV, and today it's an honor to have Jay Lee, and we're going to be talking about bone up or break down. And we're going to show you how the invisible creates the physical and how energy medicine is the key. Even when it comes to supplementation and things that you take, it's all about frequency, it's all about vibration, and it's all about hormones, and it's all about chemicals. Okay, so remember, the invisible creates the physical. Hi, Jay. How you doing?
Hello, Dr. Wolf. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about bone up or break down, right?
That's right. All about calcium and bones and its relation to our overall health.
Yes. And you're going to be going through a slideshow and just showing what the real truth is about actually osteoporosis, osteopenia, how to have strong bones, how if we don't have strong bones, how we can actually get strong bones, correct?
That's right. And therefore, not just strengthening your bone health, but your overall health.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's get started.
Okay, here we go. Well, I'm going to be talking about today calcium ion therapy. Well, not talking about calcium supplementation, which may come with many health risks, but it is calcium ion therapy. Well, we know that calcium is most studied but most misunderstood and difficult nutrient because if you're vitamin C deficient, you can pretty much supplement it. Magnesium deficiency, you can supplement it. But the problem with the calcium is that you see your bone getting weaker and weaker, getting osteopenic or osteoporosis. Then you're recommended to take some calcium supplements at really pretty high dose, like 1,000 milligrams, 1,200 milligrams. But are these really helping our bones? So I think it's really important for us to understand how calcium really works in our body, because by putting in those high-dose supplements will not automatically build your bone. It could actually have greater health risks. So let's find out how calcium works in our body. We have to know that only ionic form of calcium is physiologically active. At a given moment, your body, your blood will have about 50% of its calcium in ionic form, and the other 50% protein calcium and 5% inorganic calcium. But ionic calcium is the one that we should be really concerned about, but that's because it is the only form that our body uses and regulates.
And it also does, if I'm correct, it does 120,000 different chemical and hormonal processes per second. And this is something that everybody starts losing after the age of 30 because of the so-called modernization diet, right?
That's right. We all experience ionic calcium deficiency as we grow older, but it's not going to be automatically addressed by putting in protein-bound calcium. And you may wonder, what is protein-bound calcium, right? It is how calcium actually comes into our body. All the calcium that we take, whether it's from foods or from supplements, all gets digested in our stomach. It goes down to small intestine and binds with vitamin D and peptides and goes into our body in inactive protein-bound form, right? That's how all the calcium goes in. But an active form that our body actually uses is ionic calcium. So when our body experiences calcium deficiency, the way our body feels is ionic calcium deficiency, which cannot automatically be addressed by putting in protein calcium from supplements. That's a calcium paradox, right? Ionic calcium plays a lot of roles in our body, as you can see here. It's not just your structure. It's not just bone and teeth. It plays an important role in blood clotting, muscle and heart contraction, stem cell regulation and differentiation, right? It's also a neurotransmitter, second messenger in your cells. Hormone secretion, enzyme activation depends on very precise ionic calcium signaling. right? Here I'm mentioning the word signaling. It's going to come out more and more, right? It's all about signaling. So immune function, how it correctly operates, depends on very precise ionic calcium signaling. Your cell membrane stability, the transcription happening in cells, DNA replication, mitochondrial function, cell cycle, repair, autophagy, apoptosis, all these important cellular functions that you can see here on this slide depends on very precise levels of ionic calcium, right? So ionic calcium is the one that our body uses. You could actually have plenty of protein calcium in your body. However, when your body is experiencing ionic calcium deficiency, and if you cannot transfer that protein calcium into ionic calcium, then your body still experiences ionic calcium deficiency. And guess what your body gets it from? By resorbing your bone. It breaks down your bone and get the needed ionic calcium right away because your body cannot really wait.
Jay, can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So listen, everyone, I need you to get this. Okay, you're not getting older, you're getting calcified. So understand, arthritis, well, that's a calcification, scar tissue problem in your joints. Okay, how about this? How about gallstones? Well, just know this, you wouldn't have gallstones if you didn't need to buffer down your blood and you weren't so acidic and so inflamed. You're pulling so much calcium from your bones, you're losing that, and that's why you've got gallstones. What about kidney stones? What about calcification in your breast or anywhere else in your muscles or in your organs or in your tendons? So the calcium's being pulled from the bones and it's going out to the tissues. And that's why we've got issues in our tissues. And all of this calcium that's being pulled out are causing what we call little dams and blocks, which is stopping blood flow, lymph flow, and actually creating energy problems in the body. But what about calcifying at the cellular level and actually causing mitochondrial damage, which was responsible for every illness you can even think of, because it happens from the cell level outward. So I think Jay will probably touch on this, but I need you to really get this, that I am not stiff because I haven't pulled the cement out of my bones, which is the calcium, and displaced it in my body like grandpa. Hey, grandpa, you look like you're in pain. Are you stiff as a board? Well, yes, he is. He's cemented. And understand something, and you got to know this, the only calcium ion therapy in the world that's been proven to actually bring the calcium back into your bones that's been displaced is what we're talking about today. Jay, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. You mentioned a very important point there, the calcification, right? As we are growing older, we only look at our bones and then see that, oh, my bone's getting weaker. But then all the calcium coming out from the bone is actually accumulating in other places in your body. That's calcification. We know that vascular calcification is bad, organ calcification, soft tissue, bone spur, joint calcification, all of that is pretty bad. But the worst form of calcification is actually cellular calcification. Because as you can see on this diagram here, ionic calcium plays a very important role in cellular level, right? And as I covered before, all these cellular functions, including very important mitochondrial function, depends on precise level of ionic calcium. That's why your body has to really regulate it tightly. As you can see here, when your serum ionic calcium level rises just slightly, and your body is constantly monitoring this, that your thyroid will release calcitonin, and then that also results in bone resorption. And if calcium level is too low, then your parathyroid hormone will secrete PTH hormone. That's going to actually take the calcium out of the bone, right? So you can see that no other element in our body is as tightly regulated as ionic calcium. Think about it. 4 parathyroid gland. It's a redundant system, speed and accuracy.
Right.
And your thyroid and 2 kidneys, it's skeleton, right? It's a huge reservoir of calcium, and also small intestine, right? All these organs are working real time, constantly monitoring your ionic calcium level. So it dips a little bit, it has to get it from somewhere, right? If you have some more, then you have to put it somewhere, right? So I don't see magnesium controlled this way. I don't see sodium, potassium, phosphorus, nothing really regulated this way. So calcium has a special place in our body, right? Because of its signaling capacity. Right? In cellular level, it actually generates signals like this, right? Very complex signaling that even uses amplitude modulation like AM radio and frequency modulation just like FM radio, right? It carries different signaling, right? The amplitude, frequency, duration, location of these signals give different plastic outcomes. And because this is a signaling molecule, so important to so many cellular processes, your body has to regulate it so tightly, right? Now, suddenly calcium feels so special, doesn't it, right? That's why the calcium homeostasis in our body is so important. Talking about the reservoir, we build our bone strength up to age about 35. And then from then on, we're banking calcium in our bone. And then from then on, we're going to be just keep withdrawing, right? We're taking out. And that's why after age 35, you see that the bone mineral density is dipping rapidly. For female, it's even faster because of hormonal changes too.
Can I say something, Jay? And if I can, I just want everybody to know something. Females are like the canary in the coal mine. And because there's so much inflammatory food that everybody's eating, all this extra stress, I mean, females are pulling so much more calcium from their body. And I want everyone to understand something. When it comes to healthcare, they think about bone calcium and they go, you've got osteopenia, osteoporosis. They want to stop the bone breaking, okay? And that is a big problem. I hope that Jay touches on it. But the reality is this. When you start having osteopenia, osteoporosis, just know this. You are malfunctioning on all levels, hormonally, right down to the cellular level with your mitochondria. And understand there are no diseases unless there's mitochondrial damage. And understand this, okay? People do not understand how important bone making and breaking is to create these calcium ions. And if we were healthy, we could do it. But the reality is this, that most people stop doing it around the age of 35 or it slows down a lot. And once that happens, that's where the premature aging kicks in. That's where you feel older. That's where you don't have the energy or the life force, or you can't heal as quickly either. Jay?
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. That's a very good point. I'm going to be touching more on that later on. So we know that that calcium in our bone is going to be used up as we grow older and older because we experience ionic calcium deficiency, and body needs to get it from somewhere right away, right? If the level dips too low and it cannot be replenished, then your heart stops pumping, right? So we know that the calcium has to be available in ionic form all the time, and bone is a big reservoir where we draw it from.
Or your heart would miss a beat. Okay, so you wouldn't have a proper rhythm in your heart, and then they want to start kicking in the pacemakers. Go ahead, Jay.
That's right. Arrhythmia, palpitation, all of that. Yeah, that's right. So one of the reasons why all the calcium has to go in protein form, which is inactive form, and not in active form, is because the body has to regulate ionic calcium so tightly and precisely, you cannot dump all the calcium that you daily need in ionic form. It's like running 120 volts through that transistor radio, right? So all the calcium goes in inactive form, ready to be used. So people may have some absorption issue, but then I think the greater risk is not being able to really utilize it. So there's a utilization issue. As you grow older, there's a lot of, things that we do, which is really unhealthy, taking fast food that could also leach your body of ionic calcium, high stress level that also leaches your body of ionic calcium. And then there's...
look at the last 3 years, AJ.
Lifestyle.
What about the last 3 years? The last 3 years have created turbo diseases. You're going to hear about that more and more, everyone. And those turbo diseases, everybody likes to blame them on just this, but we can't. We got to blame it on this, okay? Every time that we react, we attack our body.
That's right. You know, sedentary lifestyle, we like to just lounge around and not being engaged in physical activity. All of that actually plays a very important role in calcium dysregulation. One good illustration I like to give is what happens to astronauts in space for their 6-month stay in the space station. They come down with average 14% bone loss, and some even lost 30%. Right? That's very rapid bone loss. And don't think that the food that they intake in space is lack of calcium. They're getting plenty of protein calcium in their body. However, there's no gravity up there. So their bones and their muscles are not as challenged. So they have a problem utilizing their dietary protein calcium. But body needs ionic calcium right away. So where do you think body's getting it? By resorbing your bone.
Yeah,
So
it's taking out a loan. It's taking out a loan
right.
that it usually will never pay back.
Yeah, that's the problem, because when we're younger, once we take out, we're able to put back some in, right? And then we'll still be able to build some bone. But then after age 35, it's easier to take out, but more difficult to put back in. And our parathyroid hormone becomes actually more reactive as we age. So we take out more calcium from our bones than needed. And all that extra calcium, some of that's going to be excreted, but then big portion of that is also starts to accumulate in cellular level and start to cause calcium dyshomeostasis cellular level, disrupting signaling. And if that happens, mitochondrial function is going to be affected. And your mitochondria becomes a factory of free radicals that tons of the damages will be done. And I don't think there is any plant-based antioxidant that could quench it, right?
No, there isn't.
And if
can I say something? Also, everybody, you need to understand this. Just as a a joint can be calcified, just as a breast can have a calcium deposit, your mitochondria will get calcified. And when they do, remember, your mitochondria is supposed to spin 2,500 times per second. Do you know how fast that is? That's like a tornado. And when it gets calcified, it's spinning like 300 to 500 times per second. And that's usually people that they know that they've got a chronic problem happening here. And when that happens, you're not making the ATP that you need. And ATP is where you get all your energy. How many people know that 175 pound person actually needs to make 195 pounds to 200 pounds of ATP a day? Every cell has a mitochondria. Every cell makes ATP. Now, if you don't make enough ATP, because when you do make enough ATP, the ATP gets pushed out of the sodium-potassium pump out of the valve into the extracellular fluid. And guess what happens when we push ATP out there? A lightning bolt goes off and we create a new cell. So what do you think is going to happen when you start calcifying your mitochondria? Because, you know, between inflammatory foods and chemicals and drugs and then stressing yourself out, you create a thicker layer on each cell. So now it's calcified inside. Now there's a thicker layer. Can't detoxify properly. Can't get the oxygen in, the nutrition in. And guess what? If this happens and you deplete it of its oxygen by 35% for more than 3 days, remember Otto Warburg, he received the Nobel Prize for what? Discovering the cause of cancer, which is lack of oxygen, 35% deficit, 3 days or more. So this whole thing needs to operate properly. And remember something, what Jay's talking about today is only replacing what was taken from you. That's it. So it's not a cure. There's no such thing as cure because cures never last. But what if we could replace which was taken from us and create alignment and balance and hold it there? Jay?
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Mitochondrial dysfunction is or we call it mitochondrial disease, is now related to so many degenerative diseases, right? So I think we have to ask one more question. Say, what is driving mitochondrial dysfunction? What is behind mitochondrial dysfunction? And we cannot not talk about ionic calcium dysfunction, right? So calcium function is so closely related to ionic calcium dysfunction. So I'd like to just continue with this overactive PTH that happens with aging. And it says here that this excess blood calcium by PTH is what's causing calcification of joints, cartilage, other tissues, bone spurs, plaques, and blood vessels, obesity, metabolic syndrome, colon cancer, gingivitis, Alzheimer's disease, and the list goes on to Parkinson's, ALS, multiple sclerosis, it could be autoimmune disease, and all these metabolic syndrome that's all connected to somehow this cellular calcium signaling dysfunction, right? And that's the reason why your body has to really tight regulate it. But, as we, with aging and with a lot of toxicity and lifestyle and all of that, it starts to tatter. It starts to break down. Now, that's the problem, right? So we have to really address what's happening in cellular level with calcium. Not just looking at osteoporosis and osteopenia, not just looking at the structural, the weakening, but the goal is looking at your bone. And if you see osteoporosis, then don't just look at the calcium missing, but you have to see where it is deposited. It's deposited at cellular level, and it's creating greater havoc for your health. So our goal with calcium therapy is not just addressing or building your bone, but how can we move all that displaced calcium, especially from the cellular level, taking it all out and bring it back to where it really belongs, which is our bones, right? Is this possible, right? So that's the challenge. But before we get there, we have to know that all these hormonal changes with the sedentary lifestyle and menopause, all that leads to calcium dyshomeostasis. So let's look at cellular calcium dysregulation and diseases. I know some of this Dr. Wolf already touched upon. Dr. Thomas Levy in his book, Death by Calcium, this is what he says. All chronic degenerative diseases feature increased extracellular and intracellular levels of calcium. All chronic degenerative diseases. This is a hallmark feature, right? Why is so much elevated calcium levels extracellularly and intracellularly? And then, this is going to fill up those two buffers in the cells, right? These buffers need to function well, but then they're too calcified, too much calcium stored in there. So it starts to distort calcium signaling, causes mitochondrial dysfunction, and therefore elevates oxidative stress, right? And he says it is chronic loss of calcium from your own bones that's actually causing this cellular calcification. Dr. Robert Heaney also said, of course, all these diseases may have many causes, but they also all have one thing in common, ionic calcium deficiency. And look at this research. Such a subtle dysregulation of calcium signals have been linked to some of the major diseases in humans, such as cardiac disease, schizophrenia, bipolar, Alzheimer's disease. Right? So let's look at this research on mitochondria. During the past 2 decades, calcium ion accumulation in energized mitochondria, again, this is cellular calcification, has emerged as a biological process of utmost physiological relevance, meaning that what's happening in your cells, the disruption of the communication, is just making everything fall apart, right? So look at this Alzheimer's study. It says, collectively, the available data show that perturbed cellular calcium homeostasis plays a prominent role in the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease. Well, let's look at this research. Calcium ion is a ubiquitous and versatile signaling molecule controlling a wide variety of cellular processes such as proliferation, cell death, migration, and immune response, all fundamental processes essential for the establishment of cancer, right? It says here, altered calcium transmission has been implicated in a variety of processes fundamental for the uncontrolled proliferation and invasiveness of tumor cells and other processes important for cancer progression. So we see that even to cancer, there is calcium dysfunction. And that is why it's so important to protect our bones, because it is the too much loss of calcium from our bones that's causing cellular calcification. When our bones breaking down, it's not just releasing calcium, it's also releasing phosphorus, which elevates calcification factor, right?
And Jay, if I could say this, everyone, understand most people that, oh, grandma fell and she broke her hip. No, grandma's hip broke and she fell. Grandma fell because her bone broke, then she fell. They're never going to say that, but guess what? This is when her bones are like Swiss cheese. And understand this, it's all about bringing back proper homeostasis. And how are you going to do it, Jay?
Well, let's do that. Let's do that, because we do have a way, right? That's why we're talking about ionic calcium therapy, right? There's therapy that's geared towards really reestablishing calcium homeostasis and cellular level, restoring calcium signals, restoring mitochondrial function, reducing oxidative stress. Therefore, you will see the result of that in more, greater systemic and symptoms level, right? So this slide says bone loss leads up to 150 degenerative diseases. You can experience calcium deficiency, whether it's age-related hormone, it's stress, sedentary lifestyle, inflammation, diet and GI issues, and all these things, right? There are more, right? That leads to cellular calcification, and that could lead to degenerative diseases such as neurodegeneration, cardiac disease, metabolic syndrome, autoimmune disease, and mitochondrial disease, and even cancer, right? You can actually go to PubMed and NIH.com and type calcium and any disease. You're going to find tons of research stating pretty much the same thing, right? And that's why we have known that people with the low bone density are twice likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. And we also known that long-term studies have shown that if you have strong bones in your 50s, that you actually live 11.6 years longer, right? What would you do to extend your life 11.6 years longer, right? The research is giving you the answer. Build your bone. Build your bone. But it was not easy to build bone. All the calcium that you've been taking, it's been probably ending up the wrong place. And a lot of researchers show, it could just actually elevate the risk of a heart attack, right? Because it just further calcifies your body, right? So taking supplements, sometimes it could backfire. And if you have already lost a lot of bones, then it's all in the cells. How do you take them out, right? You're stuck with it.
Well, Jay, and we're telling the truth here when we say this. There's one product that's been proven, that's been patented to actually do that, correct?
Well, I'm going to be introducing the product later on, and our talk. I'm going to be introducing the history of ionic calcium.
Beautiful.
Therapy. It's been around, but then I guess they were able to kind of perfect it. So actually, the question is, okay, can we then reverse cellular calcium dysfunction? So the principle of ionic calcium or calcium ion therapy is restoring cellular calcium signaling, right?
Yeah.
So research have actually tried this in many different ways. So if you can actually put about 2 to 3 milligrams of calcium in ionic form, not protein form, right? It seems like nature has a defensive mechanism of getting any calcium in ionic form, right? Because it's tightly regulated, and you cannot just go somewhere and eat something, and then suddenly you're going to have a surge, huge amount of calcium going in ionic form. That's going to throw everything off, right? So our body has that natural defense mechanism, right? So all the calcium goes in protein form, and it has to be activated to release ionic calcium. The best way to do that is it's bone challenging exercises. Let's say you go to the gym and you work out, and you lift the heavy weights, and then your body's going to be utilizing the protein calcium, release ionic calcium. So your blood ionic calcium level will rise slightly. And because your body is so sensitive to the changes, your pituitary will release TSH, and your thyroid will release calcitonin, and through the calcitonin secretion, your bone building starts. Right? That's the natural physiological response to working out, right? And it's working out that releases ionic calcium. Ionic calcium triggers calcitonin release. That's what starts bone turnover. And the research has found out that, okay, if you put about 2 to 3 milligrams of calcium in ionic form in our blood, then you could actually have that desirable bone building effect, right? And then if you put 5 to 8 milligrams of calcium, then you are really pushing your bone building, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you're able to do this several times a day. Like you're going to the gym and you're working out, lifting heavy weights for 3-4 hours, and then do it again in the afternoon and do it again in the evening, right? And then you do that for a 3 or 6 month period of time. And you're able to actually trigger really robust calcitonin release that starts to build your bone, right? And this is really healthy level because you can see that from 4.3 to 5.6 milligrams, the normal range of serum ionic calcium level. And you're just adding like 2 to 3% increase, right? And then if you can do this for the period of time, then you can put your body into constant bone building mode. Now, but here is the challenge. As we grow older, we experience ionic calcium deficiency, right? And then because of lifestyle and all that and other factors, that we're not able to really tap into the power of calcitonin. Calcitonin release is triggered by ionic calcium. Either your activity releases it, or we have to find some way to put ionic calcium in the body to trigger the same bone building response, right? So if ionic calcium level rises slightly, then what happens is you're going to have a hormonal cascade that through the calcitonin release, it's endogenous, your own calcitonin, that starts to build bone. But here's the thing. What if we give a little more, right? And then really maximize bone building. And then guess what? Because you're building bone rapidly, that your body's going to be taking all the calcium back to your bone, right? It's going to really lift the burden that the cells are having with high concentration of ionic calcium, and everything is starting to get lifted, right? And just coming out from the dislocate places, and then even from the cellular level, right? All this displaced calcium is just going to dissolve and just come out, and you're going to have even the cellular level homeostasis again, where your cells can now communicate properly, the mitochondrial function comes back, oxidative stress comes down, your cells are becoming healthier, now your cells can repair, and this, as it continues through the several months, that the calcium starts from the, that's been deposited from the bone to cells, now kind of reverses from cells to bones, and you're going to see that in, more systemic and symptoms level as well, right? So that's the target of AIC therapy. Can we hear in ionic calcium therapy that this is actually very painful calcific tendonitis case, you can see here, right? But then simply dissolves and goes away. You know that this doesn't really happen, right? But then it's happening when we are really pushing the bone building to its max. And don't think this is magic, because this is how our body actually works. Right? Calcitonin is very, very powerful. It's something we're not tapping into it as we age. Right? How many of us go, into the gym and in the workout like that, strenuously, and to release that ionic calcium ourselves? Right? It's not really sustainable when you reach 60, 70, 80 years old. Right? So decalcification effects and systemic healing pathways. But here's the thing that, here's a slide that I like, right? Because we know that there are primary causes of the disease. And a lot of the doctors are actually focusing on reversing these root causes, or maybe just giving some medications to help the symptoms. But then, let's say, okay, the toxins, it could be heavy metal, mycotoxin, or chemicals like glyphosates. It could be infections, bacteria or virus. It could be genetics, right, issues. Could be environment, lifestyle, your emotional distress, all of that, right? It could be the primary cause of the disease. But then the research world has been talking about, like some of the research that I've shared before, right? Alzheimer's, suddenly it is ionic calcium dysfunction. Parkinson's, suddenly it is ionic calcium dysfunction. ALS, MS, right? Autoimmune disease. There are tons of research just dictating, hey, there's something wrong with the calcium signaling. And the suggestion was, can we stop calcium dysfunction in cellular level and stop the progression of this disease? Or it could even be therapeutic. So they're calling this secondary cause. There is a primary root cause of the disease, right? But then the secondary cause is when the primary root cause hits calcium signaling dysfunction in our cells, progression accelerates and the symptoms amplify. And we call that calciumopathy. It's a diverse group of diseases caused by a disruption of calcium homeostasis. It causes calcium signaling dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction, oxidative stress. So could we put a stopper here, right? And then stop the progression of the disease?
Right.
That's been suggested by so many researchers. So calcium ion therapy focuses on secondary cause, right? So can we stop the progression? For instance, Lyme disease, right? We know that Lyme disease symptoms can be pretty bad, right? But then the new research in Lyme disease is titled New Insights of Lyme disease. It talks about somehow Lyme borreliosis, which is a bacteria, but it's somehow causing cellular calcium dysfunction. And then it's causing mitochondrial dysfunction.
Right.
And it just increases oxidative stress, right? So it's a good candidate for calcium ion therapy, right? But 40 days into treatment, all the symptoms disappear, right? This 11-year-old had initial intervention failed and was going through so many symptoms. It was debilitating. But then he fully recovers, right? We don't know about the first cause, right? We don't know if the bacteria is still there. But then his symptoms disappeared, right? That's the secondary cause, right? So ionic calcium usually, once you elevate the serum ionic calcium level, it lasts about 4 hours, right? Within that time, it really triggers robust bone building, right? I want you to really focus on this because it is the strong bone building that leads to decalcification, even from the cellular level, that restores signaling and mitochondrial function, and that's going to have systemic result, right? So let's kind of focus on, okay, what happens with ionic calcium therapy. When first the animal trial was conducted, it was about 100% more effective than regular calcium, which is calcium carbonate. And I know that calcium carbonate is not the best the calcium supplement, but then with this test, it showed that it's 100% more effective in building bone. When the bone fracture test was conducted, as well as bone composition test. And then the ovaries are removed from these rats, right? And osteoporosis is induced. As you can see here, the bone mineral density, it drops with ovary ectomized rats. But then after adding ionic calcium, it just comes right back up. Now, CTX, I'm going to get a little technical here. The CTX is a bone resorption marker. It shows how fast you're losing your bone. So the higher number means you're losing bone faster. You can see here it goes up but comes back down again. Now, osteocalcin, which is very important hormone, has many good benefits like the beta cell proliferation in your pancreas, and then insulin sensitivity, neurotransmitter production, testosterone production, and all of that. It boosts your memory, all of that. Osteocalcin is a very important hormone secreted from your bone. And because of this study, our skeleton is now categorized as endocrine system, part of the endocrine system, right? But then the sad news is that by the time that we're losing bone mass, osteocalcin production also plummets too, because it is produced by osteoblast cells, which are bone building cells. But with our animal trial, we see that the osteocalcium level also normalizes, right? Which is a good sign.
Yeah.
Because now we're getting this important hormone back in our lives. So now we're getting this calcitonin production, which is really good in building bone, had all the other good effects too, and then that leads to osteocalcium production, right? So what triggers these two both? Ionic calcium, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ionic calcium is not really magical molecule, right? It's something that we could not generate on our own. We are experiencing deficiency with aging that now we're replenishing with special technologies that we have, right? So calcitonin is really an useful old friend. You know that calcitonin the therapy for osteoporosis, the research of that was going really robust early on, right? Because we know that our body builds bone by calcitonin, right? So it is best to give calcitonin. But then the research actually hit a dead wall because it was so difficult to find a way to put exogenous calcitonin in our body, right? So I guess mammalian calcitonin was difficult to use. And salmon, the fish calcitonin was better. But then the subcutaneous injection had a lot of side effects. The oral intake did not really work that well. And the nasal inhaler worked best, but then it was still irritating, so you have to kind of alternate, your nostril each day, and if it gets in your eye and your skin, you have to wash it right away. It had a lot of issues, right? And then other osteoporosis drugs came out, like bisphosphonates, and then denosumab. All these came out and just took over the osteoporosis market. These are very strong anti-resorptive medications. Essentially stops osteoclast cells. So you're not going to have bone loss. But the problem is our bone has to be maintained every day, meaning that every day you're getting microcracks in your bones, and those microcracks has to be cleared by osteoclast cells. And then osteoclast cells going to call osteoblast cells to come in and put a fresh new coat of bone on top of it, right? That's how we repair our bones and strengthen it. So by essentially killing this osteoclastic activity, you may not be losing calcium from your bone, but your bone is also not maintained. So these drugs may have its uses, right, in certain cases, but it's not a real solution to really build your bone, right? You're just keeping this unrepaired old bone and thinking that you have stronger bone. Usually the researchers use DEXA, bone mineral density.
Right.
But there's a problem with DEXA because DEXA scan only shows bone mineral density. It does not show bone quality. It does not show bone strength, right? So I'm going to let you know a little secret here. You could actually have the same T-score, but then one could actually have 10 times more the fracture risk than the other, right? Same bone mineral density, but then the bone strength can be 10 times different. So nowadays, we recommend something like REMS, which uses ultrasound. It measures not only bone density, but bone strength as well.
So what everybody's looking for is younger bones. You can't hold on to old bone because that's why we call it brittle bone. That's why we talked about grandma, her hip broke, then she fell.
That's right. So here's the thing. All that dead bone mass that you're accumulating over the years, all the tattering bone, you take DEXA, it looks like it still come out the same, or even a little higher, right? So that's a little, I guess, misleading, I would say. So that's why these drugs, they recommend if you come off it, it says that you have to replace it with another anti-resorptive medication.
Right.
Why? When your osteoclast activity comes back up, right? Then your body's going to see, wow, I have tons of garbage here, tons of bones that just needs to be cleared up, right? So that's why these medications give a warning that if you stop using this drug, then you may lose bone mineral density rapidly. Don't think you're losing bone mass. Your body's clearing all those dead bone mass that needs to go away anyways, right? So,
and isn't that the same with everything?
You have a stronger bone, not just more minerals in your bone.
Jay, it's the same thing with just even when you go to actually heal yourself, you think the symptoms are negative, so you stop your healing. Because everyone's been taught to run away from anything that's called a negative symptom when they don't even know it's not a negative symptom, it's a positive one.
Yeah. So, sometimes it looks like it's getting worse before it gets better.
Right.
But if you really want to rebuild bone, and if you've been on these anti-resorptive drugs, expect to lose some bone mineral density because some of these tattered bone, all the disconnected structures have to be removed, right, before your body's able to put a fresh new coat of bone, right? That's why calcitonin, which is a natural way of building bone, was the best way to build it, right? It's a peptide hormone. What it does is that it's anti-resorptive too, right? It says to osteoclast cells, hey, take it easy, slow down, right? And then it's also telling these osteoclast cells to call in osteoblast cells to rebuild bone, right? So you actually need pretty healthy bone resorption in order to have good bone formation as well.
Right.
These are tandem, work hand in hand. That's how you repair the bone, right? But here's the thing. Bisphosphonates, your bone resorption marker, CTX, is going to drop about 50%. And you think like, oh, I'm not losing bone, right? And denosumab could even bring it down to like 70%, right? But that means you're essentially killing the bone turnover. Bone is not being repaired, right? There's another marker that I recommend is P1NP, which is bone formation marker, right? Calcitonin bone building may reduce CTX to a certain point, but you got to maintain a healthy level of bone resorption, right? Because it is osteoclast cells that are calling in osteoblast cells. Right? So CTX may come down to a healthy level. Then your P1NP, which is bone resorption, a bone formation marker, will also go up, right? Yeah. So if you measure these two, then if CTX comes down slightly and then P1NP goes up, then you know that you're actively rebuilding your bone. Unfortunately, bisphosphonates and denosumab, CTX comes down, but P1NP also comes down, meaning that bone formation is also not taking place.
Right.
So calcitonin is the only way, really, to protect and rebuild your bone, right? That's the hormone that really triggers your bone stem cells to work, right? However, exogenous calcitonin intake has so many challenges. And before the research world could figure it out, and these anti-resorptive drugs came out and took over the market, so still calcitonin is used, but probably it's like a more secondary intervention, right? But with ionic calcium therapy, you are triggering your own calcitonin, endogenous calcitonin, without any side effects, right? So if we take care of ionic calcium deficiency, your bone will rebound, right? So, and then the researchers found out that, hey, you know what? Does not matter what age group you're in. Calcitonin secretion, production is still robust. It just said it's not tapped into. Whether you're 60s and 70s, right? If we can somehow give ionic calcium, we can still trigger stronger bone building. And then some studies show that if you're postmenopausal, somehow body knows that you need to protect bone more, so you're able to secrete more calcitonin. It's just that the ability is there, but we're not tapping into it.
And that's where
calcium is the molecule that could trigger that. But here's the thing: there's some, I guess, I guess another, deception you may call it out there is that you may find some ionic calcium product. Don't just go to Google and then say, or Amazon, and then type ionic calcium. You're going to find some products mostly based out of calcium chloride and calcium oxide and something like that, right? Some of the salt that can really melt easy in water solution and produce tons of ionic calcium. None of that is going to go in ionic foam, right? That's why it's so misleading. Yes, you can say it's ionic calcium. You drink it, it all goes down to small intestine, binds with vitamin D and peptides, and goes in as inactive protein-bound form. Well, let's just take any calcium, right? Once your strong stomach acid digests it, in the chyme, you're going to find tons of ionic calcium because you digest it. None of that is going to go in ionic form, right? Everything's going to go down with protein, goes as inactive protein-bound calcium, right? And there's a reason for that. Your body has this protective mechanism. It gets tightly regulated substance, and you can't have all the things coming in ionic form, right? Take some form that comes in ionic, some form in a protein form. Your body cannot do that, right? Such a tightly regulated mechanism. Everything has to come in inactive form. Okay, so then you may wonder, then how are you doing it, right? I'm gonna share the technology soon, but I want to kind of share some exciting stuff, the results of it before I get into it. So there are two markers that we recommend, CTX and P1NP, and look at this. You see that yellow is osteopenia and red is osteoporosis and the green is normal. You can see that it's able to build bone rapidly, right? It's not ionic calcium. It is calcitonin bone building, right? You're not just accumulating minerals in your bone or trying to keep minerals in your bone. You are actually rebuilding, repairing your bone, right? So you can see here that for the 66-year-old male and 62-year-old female, rapid bone density increase. This is really remarkable. It can happen if you're pushing calcitonin release multiple times a day throughout 3 to 6 months, even up to 1 year. You can see that from red to green. 60-year-old female, look at this. For her age, she was in the median, right? She was like average bone density, which is still osteopenic. But then with ionic calcium therapy, you can see that when she measured it again, within a very short period of time, you can see that it goes all the way up here, above top bracket for her age, and then now she has 30-year-old bone health. This is a real 30-year-old bone health because you are renewing your bone, right? And only calcitonin could do this. You can see that it goes up above top bracket. Now she has 30-year-old bone health. Now this lady I know personally. She took a measurement 1 year later and found out that she's above top bracket for her age, and then now she has 32-year-old bone health. By the way, this is the ultrasound-based machine, so it really measures the bone strength, right? So, and then she fell last winter on a concrete floor and hit the same spot on her knee 3 times. 3 times she fell. Not even a hairline fracture, right? Calcium and Bone Health Institute of Canada did a volunteer study. -1 is x-axis represent osteopenia borderline, right? And this is the male population. Blue is before, green is after. You can see that there's significant rise in bone mineral density.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here it's not just bone mineral density, it's bone strength, right? Because this is what's using FDA-approved ultrasound machine. Right? You can see that for the female population, more of them are starting down here, like lots of osteopenia, osteoporosis, and many of them experience significant changes, right? And here's one thing that we asked so many dentists in the dental congress. We actually asked hundreds of dentists present, raise your hand if you see this is possible naturally, right? None of them did. It's extraction cavitation. once it's cleaned, it just fills up with natural bone. This 60-year-old gentleman, actually his entire T-score rose during this time as well, right? We have seen some cases where the bone necrosis case got resolved, and this is a steroid-induced osteoporosis. That's the auto fracture just heals up, and this person was able to walk again, right? So once again, this is REMS machine. We know that DEXA just measures density. It does not measure the strength, right? So REMS actually now not just measuring quantitative, but has a qualitative assessment of bone, okay? And there are a lot of things that contributes to bone strength. Bone mineral density, right, has some place, definitely, but that's not the whole picture, right? So let's look at some of the more dental issues. What good is having all those implants if this happens, right? Your bone is eroding away, right? We have a lot of good stem cells, right? Dental pulp stem cells and periodontal ligament stem cells, very active stem cells. But what are these stem cells doing? It's supposed to repair, right? But it seems like it's just sitting there. Well, there is reason why, because stem cells are very sensitive to calcium signaling. When your body is experiencing calcification all over, of course the stem cells, environment is affected as well, right? It says here, acting as an intracellular messenger, calcium ion has a key role in cell signaling pathways in various differentiation stages of stem cells. Calcium ion mediated signaling is essential for the maintenance of stem cells and for promoting their development and differentiation, also focusing on their therapeutic potential. So you're going to see a lot of these. Like, you can focus on this, and it could provide a solution, right? But calcium dysfunction, until now, there's no way to address it because calcium flows from bone to cells, and you may slow it down, but you could not stop, right? There's no way to take it all out and reverse it. Look at this research. This is a periodontal research. And I just have a cut and paste of a conclusion here. It says, the concentrations and the ratios of a calcium ion to phosphorus ions could significantly influence proliferation, differentiation, and mineralization of a human periodontal ligament stem cells. And within the ranges concentration tested, we found that 9 millimole to 4.5 calcium 2 phosphorus ions were optimal concentrations for proliferation, differentiation, and mineralization. Do we have 2-to-1 ratio? No. People have 1-to-2, 1-to-3, even 1-to-4, but not 2-to-1. And ionic calcium being 9, not even close, less than 2. So when you're taking this calcium ion therapy, of course, you take this on empty stomach, right? You take about 5 ml, mix into 500 ml of water, and just drink it, right? And then in your stomach, it's going to be absorbed as ionic calcium, right? I'm going to show scientifically how it's going to work later. But before you drink it, right, it's because it's absorbed through all the epithelial lining, you can just swish around your mouth. Swish around before you drink one gulp, and do another one until you drink it all, right? It's going to be all absorbed. It's going to elevate this ionic calcium level, right? And then when it triggers bone building, which happens pretty quick, the phosphorus level is going to drop too, bringing this to the ideal ratio that this research has recommended. And that's why we see the reason why these cavitations do get filled up. This is before, or this is after, right? Again, before, after. And you can even see the alveolar bone rising. This is a 45-year-old male. You can see that the teeth really they had no support, but now it's getting stronger, right? So if you can activate your own stem cell, then you're able to see tremendous result, right? The people who could not do implants, right, are able to do so now. Look at that, right? So we had like one dentist, when a patient told us that, if you cannot, fill that cavitation to do implants without bone graft. And when the patient told, I heard about this calcium ion therapy, let me try that for 3-4 months and come back to you. And then he said, if you come back with, strong enough bone to do implants, then I'm going to be eating my hat, right? And of course, the dentist was surprised 3-4 months later that this happened, and he didn't end up eating his hat. But then, he was really glad that his patient was able to do implants. So, what is this calcium ion therapy? What substance does it really use, right? Because we tried calcium chloride, calcium oxide, all these things. Doesn't matter. Any calcium that goes in your stomach is going to be digested and goes down to the small intestine, binds with vitamin D and peptides, and goes in as inactive potent calcium, right? And then intravenously, calcium ion therapy it's been there, right? In the case of calcium channel blocker overdose, or if you have hypocalcemia, and you be rushed to hospital, and then they will put some calcium chloride in your vessel and resolve that issue. But then you cannot do that multiple times to induce bone building because the side effect is too great. You can risk your life, right? So I'm going to be introducing what's called it's anti-orbital calcium carbonate. That's because the strong bonding that you have in nature, right, is replaced by very weak anti-orbital bonding. That's the name it comes from, anti-orbital, the calcium, right? It's a very weak bonding. So in room temperature, you're not going to find any molecule naturally on Earth that has this chemical bonding stable. But after years of research and development, we're able to stabilize it, right, using water molecules, the hydrogen bond, putting all those weak bonds together in a way that is strong enough to be stable up to 55 degrees Celsius. So you can mix this into the room temperature or cold water and drink it on empty stomach. It's going to expand your stomach, right? And this is the only calcium that is absorbed through the stomach wall, right? Not in small intestine, passively, without digesting. It's when atomic orbitals combine in ways that leads to predominantly destructive interference. So these atoms do not want to kind of stay together. So you can see how weak it is compared to regular calcium bonding in nature, right? So once you ingest it inside your stomach lumen, it's going to disintegrate into 3 components: oxygen, carbon dioxide, and calcium ion. Now, even though this is man-made, it's like a vehicle, right? It just disintegrates. When it's ready to be absorbed, it just becomes the components that our body knows what to do with. So it's all natural, very safe. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, calcium ion. Our body has plenty of it, right? But here's the secret. It has a very peculiar chemical equation here, right? All the other calcium, not just calcium carbonate, once it's digested, you're going to have cation and you're going to have anion. Positive charged ions, negative charged ions, electrically neutral because canceling each other out, right? But because AIC calcium, it releases oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is stable. It has net positive charge, just producing cations, right? And this is only possible when you have this anti-orbital bonding, right? So positive charges build around your stomach wall, and then your body's going to absorb that passively through diffusion and osmotic pressure in ionic form, right? So in about 30 minutes, 95%, 99% of that is going to be absorbed into your body in active form. And because your body is constantly watching for it, right? If there's slight elevation, whether it is 2 or 3 milligrams or 5 milligrams, all the way up to 8 milligrams, our strongest product, right, can really trigger strong calcitonin-based bone building because we have that system already, right? So it's all about putting calcium in ionic form and triggering the natural physiological response. right? Even decalcification and cellular calcification resolving, all that is just a natural way, right? So we found actually how to really hack calcitonin bone building that the research world failed. That's because they focused on just using animal calcitonin exogenously, right? Because there's no way they could get ionic calcium in our body, into our body before, right? But ionic calcium is the trigger anyways, right? To trigger endogenous calcitonin production. But because of this anti-orbital ionic calcium, AIC, we're able to do that, right? This is the only calcium, unlike others, that goes through the stomach wall without digestion in ionic form, while all the other, doesn't matter in aqueous solution you have ionic calcium or not, right? It has to be digested, goes down to a small intestine, binds with vitamin D and peptides, and goes in as protein-bound form. AIC also has a very unique physical property. It just, because it works together, binds with water molecules, it just flies out together with water molecules, right? So here's my suggestion. As we age, a lot of people just fall under category A. The body experiences ionic calcium deficiency, right? So they have bone resorption. Calcification happens in cellular level. It just creates all kinds of havoc, leads to degenerative disease. Let's say you are in category B, where, okay, your dietary calcium is good, your vitamin D, vitamin K, when you exercise, your healthy mentality, and all of that. Less stress, very active, working out, and all that. Less parathyroid hormone-led bone resorption. You're utilizing more of your protein calcium, right? And you have good health benefits. However, there's still other factors like the hormonal factors. So you may be losing bone mass slower, but then you're still getting there. The calcium is still flowing from your bones to cells. It's just a lot slower. That's it. But now, category C, because of ionic calcium therapy, your calcitonin release from your thyroid, right? It can really bring in not just strong bone, but decalcification and cellular calcium homeostasis, stopping that secondary cause of the disease, right? So be able to kind of stop the progression, or I guess stop the amplification of the symptoms, right? For this reason, not going to be sharing all the other results, but we had pretty good cases with the neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's patients, dementia patients being able to remember, right? Parkinson's, tremors getting a whole lot better, right?
ALS.
Also, like a heart disease patients, rheumatoid, autoimmune diseases also benefited, because all of these are just related because calcium signaling. Any disease that is affected by calcium dysfunction is going to be helped, right? So it's pretty simple. It has no taste, no color, no smell. It feels like you're drinking mineral water, right? You can do this multiple times a day. The first thing in the morning when you're thirsty, you can put down 500 ml. And 30 minutes before lunch, 30 minutes before dinner, you can put down, 2 more doses. 3 doses a day. And then do it for at least 3-month period of time. Start building the momentum of bringing calcium from cells to bones and see what happens. If you see any good signs, right, then continue, right? In our experience, between 3 and 6 month period of time, this is kind of sweet spot where people experience good results. Some had to extend to 9 months, but then they were encouraged to continue because of the signs that they are seeing. And it has a lot of applications, and it's been, pretty amazing in our experience.
Jay, do you mind if I break in for a second? Just only because of some people commenting. Everyone, just know this. To get the product, you need to call in, okay? The product's not in our store, all right? And for those of you, and then they will suggest that you get a consult with me so we can talk about it. Everyone, my phone number is 469-861-8884 because I want you to consult with me because this is an expensive product, but it's the only one of its kind that can do what it does. And the other thing is, for more science on this, go to the Doc of Detox library at docofdetox.com. You're going to see in there where we've done shows and we've provided you all the science on so many different illnesses, okay, all the way to cancer. So check that out in the library and understand something, everyone. You won't find it where you can go and purchase it right on Doc of Detox store. You will have to call it in, and you will need to have a conversation with me because we want to make sure that everything is done correctly. Right, Jay?
Yes, this is therapy, and it's not just a supplemental product that you can buy.
Yes.
It's therapy that requires practitioners' expertise.
And then they're also asking, what are the differences between the products? Do you want to talk about that?
Well, there is definitely a potency difference, but usually to really trigger strong enough bone building, the calcitonin-based bone building that could decalcify, we recommend that they use the product that's the strongest. And strongest formulation is called Maragen. But then you need to talk, I guess, Dr. Wolf, more about how to really use that.
Yeah, and if you call me, we can assess this properly because we don't want you wasting your money. We don't want you wasting your time. This product has no harmful side effects at all, just positive. Everything positive about it. But let's just make sure that we do it right. Everything needs to be done right. Okay? 469-861-8884 is my phone number. Just know you're always going to get a call back. And just know that it's my honor to help you. Don't say I don't want to interrupt you or I know you're really busy. Understand I want to be busy with you, okay? Taking massive personal action and actually letting us show you how to follow through on everything we said today, that it's actually true. Jay?
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's a kind of new concept that I shared today, linking the bone health with your overall health. There has been a lot of studies actually saying that. There's been some studies also showing that your all-cause mortality rises over 30% if you have low bone density. So bone health and overall health is definitely related. Now the research is really connecting the dots through calcium signaling, mitochondrial function, and all of that. There may be a lot of good things to help your health, but then at the most basic level, if your cells are miscommunicating, right, and causing mitochondrial dysfunction and increases oxidative stress because of communication breakdown, there's only so much you can do with other remedies. Let's get this basic thing figured out, and then all the other things that you do for your health will actually have, I guess, more multiplied effects too.
If you picture it, everybody, a product that does over 120,000 hormonal and chemical processes. I mean, without calcium ions, we don't have proper communication. And the reality is with blue light poisoning, with all the 5G, 6G, and with everybody thinking that drinking alcohol is quite normal and doing prescription drugs and eating like the majority of the population are poisoning themselves with their diet. But it just seems okay because everybody's doing it. Understand something. We're being undermined right now the most that we've ever been in history. So like I said, you know, if you want more information, you can call me at 469-861-8884. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. Or you can also get information in my library, and there's a lot in there. Just go to the CIT guide, Calcium Ion Therapy Guide. Jay?
Well, thank you, Dr. Wolf. I think you covered it pretty well.
I think you did too, sir. And I need everyone to understand that there's not another product like this on the planet. You need to do your homework. And then you need to find out why it's so important that we restore this metabolic process that happens in the body. A lot of people, and please, you might think I look old anyways, but that's okay. But the reality is a lot of people ask me, you know, how do you keep going? How do you keep functioning? How do you do everything you do? Why do you look younger? And why do you look younger than you looked a few years ago? Well, I took my health seriously. And I do Merigen once a day without fail. And I try to do it twice a day, but I don't think I really need it twice a day anymore because I look after myself. I love myself. I care for myself. I respect myself. I say no to what I need to say no to and yes, what I need to say yes to. And most people will never do that. They will compromise their health for a social life, or they'll compromise their health for love. And you need to understand, when are you going to respect, honor, and protect that body of yours? You know, unless you do something different, it's not going to become different. Okay? Jay, would you like to finish?
Yes. Well, I also take this once a day myself. It's been, definitely helpful for my overall health. It is really important that a lot of things that really, cause the bone loss are the negative things in our lives. It could be the stress and the worries and concerns. We have actually seen some people, highly stressed people, even taking with ionic calcium, their bone building was really minimal, right? So it is really important, in light of really learning about how calcium ion therapy can help us, that we do eliminate things in our lives that really plays a negative role in our health. And I'm sure Dr. Wolf can really help you on that matter as well.
Well, we can. And also, if you don't want to come to me, you can go into my library, and I have what's called Braveheart Online Emotional Masterclass. We used to charge $1,000 for it. It's free. Let me see you take the time. Let me see that you deserve the time. And understand something. Most people are terrorizing themselves to the point that they're tearing themselves apart. You know, if you don't change the programs you run here, okay, because your personality creates your reality. And, you know, we want you to be able to take the best products, but we don't want you to forget about your emotional wellness, okay? And understand something. You're not your personality until you have unconditional love and care for yourself, and that you've got rid of the judgment, the guilt, the jealousy, all of these emotional things that we just react and attack ourselves and everyone else. Anyways, I'm not going to go into it. I just want to thank Jay for coming on today. And we will come back in about a month from now because this is a very important subject. And we'll be talking about the same product because that's not going to change. But we'll be talking about so many different issues in your tissues that, we're talking about 150, life-threatening illnesses that people get, and you will call them autoimmune diseases. Okay, and just know this, that we're here to hopefully give you a better day. Okay, a day without pain, a day with energy, a day that you love your life. That's what we're all after, aren't we, Jay?
Yep, I'm on the same boat with you.
Yep. Thank you, Jay.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wolf. Thank you, everyone.
Have a beautiful day, my friend.
Okay, take care.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed it. Next time I'll try to do better by putting my phone on so that we don't get all these messages and then me trying to fix everything. Sometimes I forget, But the reality is that if you need me, call me, 469-861-8884. Talk to me like you're a next door neighbor, friend, and we've known each other forever, and just relax. And don't go, I know you're too busy. Don't do that. Respect yourself enough and learn to do that. They've tried to teach us that if you're going to call somebody with DR on it or a practitioner, that you don't want to eat up their time. Well, you can eat up my time. Okay, and we'll figure out what we can do the best for you. Okay, do check out my library and check out the calcium ion therapy, and know that you are going to have to call in to order it, and they are going to ask you to talk to me because guess what? Well, we don't want you to waste your money, and we don't want you to waste your time. Okay, all right. We need this to work. Okay, because you need to have faith in this beautiful body of yours. Okay, just know this. Okay. Get a Braveheart Love Band and just keep snapping it. Keep yourself in the present moment. Keep yourself connected to the Lionheart breath. Walk around with a slight smile on your face and ask yourself, if you totally unconditionally love yourself, what would you do for yourself? I'm not talking about buying our products. I'm talking about what would you do for yourself? You'd let yourself off the hook, wouldn't you? Okay, you'd treat yourself with respect and honor. Okay? Don't let the old programs that they have force-fed into our brains take us down. God bless everyone, and have the best day of your life. Bye now. It doesn't want to turn off. Isn't that something? Okay, we'll go over here to this one. Okay. Okay. I can't turn you guys off. There you go. All right. 1 second. No. All right, everyone. I'm going to have to say goodbye, and I'm going to turn my phone off manually. Have a beautiful day. Bye now.